Hi there, I am Pamela Petrick, also known as the Dietless Dieting Coach, and I am a registered nurse, a certified holistic health coach, and busy women come to me when they are ready to ditch the yo-yo dieting, the constant weight regain, and the fatigue, and they are ready for natural, holistic strategies for their unique bodies so they can release the weight, keep it off, and feel light and free. And when they work with me via my Beyond the Fork Academy, we customize their journey for their own unique body. And so I am on a mission for you to find those solutions that are natural and holistic that'll work for your unique body, which is exactly why I created the Beyond the Food Weight Loss Summit, specifically designed for women over 40 who are ready to break free from the constant weight regain and nothing's working for you. This summit is different because I'm bringing together experts who will share their top strategies to help you release weight naturally without extreme diets, restrictions, or extreme workouts, and help you to achieve lasting weight loss and transform your health for good. Plus, every expert is giving you a free gift, all specifically geared for women over 40. Do you have your pen ready? It's time for our next featured expert for the Beyond the Food Weight Loss Summit, Real Solutions for Women Over 40. I'm so honored to be here with you today for the Beyond the Food Weight Loss Summit. I'm Lisa Goldberg, and I'm a nutritionist and weight loss coach. And I am truly excited to have this conversation because I believe so many people struggle with emotional eating that leads to yo-yo dieting, and they spend decades going from diet to diet to diet, and you lose the weight, but you don't know how to keep the weight off. So I am a big believer, after doing this work for 20 plus years, that if you don't address what got you to be overweight in the first place, or what caused you to regain the weight will always find its way back. And so I'm going to start a little bit by telling you a little bit about my story and how I got started in the work that I do. And what really got me interested in nutrition was I was one of those people that gained the freshman 20, right out of the gate in college. And so I spent like my whole first year gaining and losing the same weight, right? And trying the Cambridge diet, the Slim Fast diet, the Stewardess diet, right? I'm probably dating myself by those diets, but you kind of get the point. It was like these quick fix, fast diets. I would lose the weight, but then I would just go back to doing what I was doing. And then obviously the weight would come back. So it was that part of my journey in my life that got me interested in nutrition. And I started to do some research on how I was going to lose the weight outside of just going on those quick weight loss diets. And so ultimately, I ended up not while I was in graduate school, but I went back to undergraduate school. But in graduate school, I went to NYU. I got my master's degree in clinical nutrition. And when I started coaching my clients, I found that all of my clients would ask me the same question: what can I eat after dinner? And enough of my clients started to ask me this question that it got me started thinking that there must be something more to this, right? Because what I learned at school was about protein, fat, and carbs and calories. And that's what I would do. I would give them the nutrition plan. I would talk about what they ate, and they would lose weight. And what they would share with me during our counseling sessions together was that this wasn't their first rodeo, right? They've lost weight before, but they gained it back. And now they've come to me because they want to lose the weight. But the question of what can I eat after dinner was what got me into mindful eating, mindfulness, habit change, behavior change, which led into mindset change. And the more work I did, the more I discovered that the reason why people kept regaining the weight that they lost was because they never changed the habits. They had certain habits that they repeated over and over and over again that never changed. So therefore the weight came back. But as I got deeper into understanding mindset, what I recognized is their eating patterns of behavior all started in childhood. Because if you think about it, our relationships with food start when we're young, and it starts with the family. So maybe you had, a parent, whether it was a mom or a dad, or who was always on a diet, who always talked about food, or was always, restricting themselves. Or perhaps you were a child who always struggled with your weight and your parents restricted you. Or you heard things like maybe you didn't have or maybe you had a sibling that didn't struggle. And so you heard something like, well, they can have the cookies, but you can have the apple. Or maybe you heard something like, there's children starving in some other country, so therefore you should clean your plate. Or you need to clean your plate before you can get dessert. So if you think about the messaging that you received as a child, that all is wired into your brain. So if you're somebody who has struggled with food, weight, and dieting for all of your life, think about, where did your relationship with food get started? Because oftentimes the clients that I work with, they went on their first diets at 8 or 12 or 14, or were taken to a diet doctor. So now the message is you're not good enough the way you are. And all of this ties into, and while that might not be a conscious thought that you walk around thinking, right, in your everyday life, it's subconsciously wired into your brain, right? Because if you think about how that makes you feel, if somebody was to try to fix you or change you, especially as a young age, your experience or your interpretation of that experience could be that I'm not good enough the way I am. And so, or something needs to change. And so you try to be this perfect child, because perfectionism is tied into weight loss. Because think about it. I'm going to get into this, in a little bit, but if you think about the perfectionist of the diet, right? Your mindset is, well, if I'm not eating perfectly, then I'm somehow failing, or I'm somehow messing something up. So it's really your programming from childhood, your relationship with food, and how it got started is so ingrained, which is why you keep repeating your habits and behaviors and patterns around food. So when I work with clients, the first thing I teach them is how to eat in the life that you live, how to nourish your body without restriction and deprivation. Because let's face it, diets is something that we cut out all the foods we love because you've been taught by any diet out there, right? Because truthfully, what diet actually has some cake or some wine or some cookies on it? None that I know of, unless it was the cookie diet from way back when, which obviously isn't a sustainable way to eat, because going on a diet isn't a sustainable way to live. Because if it was, you probably wouldn't have gone off that diet that helped you lose the weight in the first place. But getting back to nourishing your body, it is so important that you learn how to eat while indulging, being able to have some cookies, being able to have some wine. Because if you bring that back into your life after you've cut it out, what's going to happen, right? You're going to end up gaining the weight back. Now, can you eat cookies or have some cake or drink wine every day? Obviously not. So what I teach is the concept of how much and how often in 7 days. So once or twice a week, if you want to indulge, and the words that you use matter. So I really emphasize not using the word treat or reward, because I don't believe in treating yourself or rewarding yourself with food, right? It's negative. It just keeps you in the loop, in the negative loop. But it's words that we learn when we're kids. So what I teach is to change the word to indulgence. So if you want to indulge yourself, whether it's a burger and fries or whether it's a piece of chocolate cake, you can once or twice a week. You obviously can't eat the whole cake, right? But you can have some cake over the course of 7 days and still be able to lose and maintain your weight, right? So learning to eat in the life that you live, because you have to like your food. You can't eat food just for the sake of weight loss. It'll backfire, right? Nobody wants to eat plain, untasty food. It's not satisfying. It's got to ring the bell. So you have to enjoy your food, and it's got to ring the bell physically, mentally, and emotionally. Because when it doesn't, what do? You mill around the kitchen thinking, I just want that one more thing. You're not hungry, but you're still looking for that one more thing to satisfy you, even though you're not hungry. So it's not a physical satisfaction, it's a mental satisfaction, right? So your food has to taste good. That is really important. And so, one actionable takeaway for you to remember is how much and how often in 7 days, right? Once or twice in a week, you get to indulge. Again, I encourage you to change the words that you use, because I always say puppies get rewarded with food, not people, right? Because that's how they learn. But what you've learned is to reward yourself with food. And I sometimes will say to a client, well, is that all you deserve? You've done something good. You've had a great day. You feel really happy, right? Is that all you deserve is food? And the food that you're choosing is unhealthy food? Because if you think about it, if you're somebody who struggles with your weight, chances are you stress eat or emotionally eat. And what food do you choose? You choose the unhealthy stuff, right? So how is it a reward when you're making yourself sick and overweight, right? So I'm really direct when I work with my clients, because I kind of feel like that's what they need to hear. Because and I'm going to talk about the dieter's mindset, so I may as well talk about it right now. The dieter's mindset has a way of having you kid yourself, pulling the wool over your own eyes, right? I'm going to talk more specifically about that. But the dieter's mindset is a very black and white way of thinking. And it's what leads you down the rabbit hole every time. You're either being good or you're bad, right? You're on or you're off the diet. You're all in or you're all out. It's a very black and white way of thinking. And that's where the perfectionism ties in, right? So the dieter's mindset will think something like, well, I blew it. I may as well eat the whole bag of cookies. And if you think about it from a logical, practical point of view, does that even make sense? Aren't you better off just eating one or two cookies versus the whole bag, right? Aren't you further ahead? But the dieter's mindset says something like, I may as well just eat the whole thing and start again tomorrow. There is the perfectionism tied into the expectation of being that perfect child when you're young, or needing to please somebody, right? Which is where perfectionism comes in, right? You only feel like you're acknowledged, or perhaps you only felt like you were acknowledged when you did something good. So now you've become the pleaser. So the thing about food, weight, and dieting is it's never about the food, right? As the summit discusses, it's beyond the food. This is all about your old wiring, your mental programming. And that's what needs to change. But nobody talks to you about that. Nobody shows you how to do it, right? And so you need to actually create a new operating system for yourself. And that's by thinking differently, because your actions will always follow your thoughts. So you need to learn how to feed yourself in a way that's doable and sustainable for the long term. Because I always say, how you eat to lose the weight is how you need to continue to eat to keep the weight off. Which is why the first part of my process is so important. And then you have to be aware of what the habits and behaviors are that need changing. What are the habits and behaviors that get you to overeat, right? Because I always say people struggle with their weight because they eat too much food when they're eating, and they eat when they're not hungry. So what are those habits, right? Do you walk in from the outside and the first thing you do is open the refrigerator door and just take something? You don't know if you're hungry or not, but you just open the door, right? Do you go sit on the couch after dinner and the first thought in your head is, oh, what can I eat? You're not necessarily hungry, right? But you've trained in the habit, you've wired in the habit. And so think about it. What are the habits and behaviors that you have that you've had for all these years that got you to the place of where you don't want to be, right? And that's however many pounds overweight in your body you are that makes you feel uncomfortable. So that is really important because you need to know what needs to change. So, and here's the biggest part of the process. The biggest part of the process is changing your self-talk because you will do whatever you tell yourself to do. All right? Because your actions will always follow your thoughts. You don't do anything from the minute you get out of bed, right? If you think about it, when you open your eyes, you're thinking about what am I going to do? And a lot of that's automatic pilot because we do our habits in the morning. We get out of bed, we go to the bathroom, or maybe we get out of bed, we go to the kitchen and make coffee, right? Think about what your routine is. That takes no thought process, right? Because a habit is something we do without thinking because it's wired into our brain. So, what are the habits that are so ingrained? And it's really important to notice that. And so, your self talk, if you think about it, and this is where the dieter's mindset takes over, right? Because you tell yourself things that aren't true. Like, for instance, I once had a client tell me that she would tell herself that the calories she ate on the weekends didn't count, right? Talk about pulling the wool over your own eyes. Does that even make sense? Of course it doesn't. But when it's in your head, it feels like it makes complete sense. So you want to listen to what you tell yourself, right? How are you justifying eating something, right? Like talking about, I was having this conversation with a client earlier about how right? If you're going to walk into a store, like a drugstore, because you think, I'm just going to get a little bit of candy or I'll get the little bag of jelly beans. But the truth is, and I'm thinking that you could, this is going to resonate with you. You already know you're going to get the big bag, but you're telling yourself you're going to get the small bag. But you know that if you're going in there, you're going to walk out with the big bag and you're going to tell yourself, I'm not going to eat the whole thing. I'm just going to have some and then I'll save the rest. And what happens? You eat the whole bag. So if you would have said consciously, I'm not going to eat the whole bag. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a handful out. I'm going to close the bag. I'm going to stick the bag in the back of the car. And when I get home, it's going to go in the cabinet. Like you have to be that deliberate with your new messaging because you will do what you tell yourself to do. And if you think about it, the evidence shows, I know you could think back in the past when you've made a decision or you've made a choice to not eat something. And so you didn't. But then the next time, right, you feel like you've had an urge or like a compulsion to eat something. And what does the dieter's mindset say? I don't care. I'll worry about it later. I'll be better tomorrow, but I want it. Maybe some of that, maybe all of the above. And then you go in, but what happens? There's regret, remorse, and perhaps shame that follows quickly thereafter. So be really clear on how to feed yourself. What does it feel like to be content versus full or stuffed? And stopping at content and not being worried. What if I get hungry later? That's a dieter's mindset, right? That's messaging based on your past. Because perhaps you didn't get enough food at some point and you were afraid that you might get hungry. So perhaps you clean your plate just in case you get hungry later. This is the way your brain thinks right now until you learn how to change it and say something to yourself like, well, if I get hungry later, then I'll eat later. I don't have to eat now just in case, because what if I'm not hungry later? Because if you overeat just in case, you've now put too much food in your body that your body doesn't need. So these are the habits and behaviors, and you probably don't even notice them because you've been doing them for so long. So you really want to notice, going back to creating an awareness of your habits and behaviors, you want to know exactly what you do. And the biggest thing is hearing what you say to yourself, because you say the same thing. Like, for instance, and I've been having this conversation with a lot of my clients this past week. When they're in the process and they're doing the work and they say something to themselves like, you don't need that. Like, intellectually, they see food, they know they don't need it, but they want it, but they know they don't need it. And oftentimes when they say, you don't need it, it's not enough, because your brain has been so used to hearing you say that you get to ignore it, right? Because I often talk about your rabbit hole voice and your logical voice. The rabbit hole voice is the one that sabotages you. It convinces you to eat the thing that you're not hungry for. It, convinces you that you deserve the cookies when you deserve so much more. Your logical voice is the voice that's always in there saying, are you sure you want to do that? You know you don't need that. But because your brain is so programmed to eat it anyway, often when it hears that, you need to say something else. And perhaps that something else is, I'll regret that. Or you'll regret that. Or will I just end up regretting that? Because if you look for the evidence of the past, the answer is yes. If you eat when you're not physically hungry, you will probably regret it. Because if what you really want is to lose weight, you know what you shouldn't be doing. You know what you shouldn't be eating. If I had $1 for every person who said to me, I know what I should be doing, I'm just not doing it, I could retire. But it's because you don't follow your logical voice, that inner knowing that's in there. And that's what you really have to do. That's rewiring your brain. That's actually the work. And here's the thing, you guys, like, I know whenever you try to lose weight in the past, oftentimes you easily give up because it takes more energy and effort for your brain to think in the different way than it does for the old way. So, one of my clients referred to it as like control fatigue. Like, she actually, because she was practicing, she was telling herself, giving herself different messages, which, the whole thing about mindset change and habit and behavior change is about consistency and repetition. And most people can't push through enough to think the new thoughts consistently enough, right? Which is why people work with people like myself and other coaches, because they're not willing to exert the energy. And let me tell you something. I hear from so many women who aren't willing to make the effort for themselves because they're too tired, they don't have time, right? It's just me. If you live alone, right? Do you say to thought, it's just me, I can't be bothered? And think about if that's something that you say to yourself, right? Often. Because if it is, you have to wonder, why do you struggle to lose weight? Why haven't you lost the weight? Why aren't you willing to make the effort for yourself? That's what you deserve. You don't deserve the cookies or the chips. You deserve to make the time for yourself. You deserve to make the effort for yourself, because it's your responsibility, I believe, to take the best care of yourself. So this is where the whole mindset shift comes in. You have to start thinking about what you're doing differently if you want to get a different result. You can't think in the same way, because thinking in the same way will have you doing the same thing and getting the same result. And you don't want to change temporarily. you want to change for good, right? So this is where the work comes in and the commitment comes in, committing to yourself, to your life, to your health, right? What do you want and why do you want it? And why is it important for you to have that? So give that some thought. So going back into the process of how to nourish your body for the long term, creating an awareness of your habits and behaviors, changing your self-talk, right? Listening to what you tell yourself and asking yourself, is it true? Is it real? Is it factual? Because oftentimes what you're saying, what's going on up here, isn't true, right? It's your limiting beliefs. It's a story you tell yourself that has you repeating your self-sabotaging patterns. So perhaps practice asking yourself when you hear yourself thinking something, is that factual? Is that a fact? Is that true? Is that real? If you had to say it to somebody else, would you think that sounds ridiculous? Right? So become really aware of your self-talk, and then there's your triggers, right? What triggers you? What presses that button, especially if you're an emotional eater? Is it somebody? Is it a time of day? Is it, um, your environment? What is it? What pushes that button? What emotions do you actually eat? What are you using food for if it's not hunger? What are you stuffing down or distracting from? Right? So you want to ask yourself, am I hungry? Is that why I'm eating? Because right now, especially if you're somebody who emotionally eats, you believe the food is going to solve your problem. You believe the food is going to make you feel better. And it doesn't. It never does. It never will make you feel better. Because the evidence shows, right? We like to look for evidence. And the evidence shows that every time you emotionally eat, you feel bad about yourself. You beat yourself up, right? Why did I do that? I don't understand. And then you repeat the cycle. Because one of the things the dieter's mindset says is, what's the use? What's the point? I may as well keep on eating. Or the worst lie you tell yourself is, I don't care. So how often do you hear yourself saying in your head, I don't care, but I want it. I'm going to eat it anyway. I'll worry about it tomorrow. If it's often, that's one of the reasons why you struggle with your weight, or you take 3 steps forward and 2 steps back. Because you're telling yourself you don't care, and your brain believes what you tell it the most. And your brain looks for evidence of what you believe. So if you tell yourself you don't care, if you don't truly believe that you could lose weight and keep it off, you will sabotage yourself over and over and over again. And then the brain will say something like, or you'll say something to yourself like, there, I told you so. I told you couldn't do it. It keeps you safe, right? It keeps you from doing the real work. It gets you to have to feel those feelings and acknowledge those feelings you've worked so hard to stuff down and distract from all of these years. I work with women who have struggled with their weight for decades. But when they do this mindset change work, they transform their lives. And so that's what I want to help you and share with you how to do that. And these are the steps that you need to take, right? Because it's what's really important at the end of the day is that you learn how to change your messaging. Goes on in your head. You have to get clear as to what you want more than that unhealthy food, as to what you want more than cleaning your plate for food you're no longer hungry for, right? The operative words. You want to listen to what goes on in your mind for things that sound like I'm in the mood for, or I feel like. That's not I'm hungry. I'm hungry is more of a declaration. So listen to what you're saying to yourself. all of the clues are actually going on in your mind. And the only way to lose weight and keep it off for good is to change the thinking that produces your habits and behaviors, which is why, as I said earlier, it's so important that you need to know what to change. And so it's a process of change. Slow and steady wins this race. It's not how fast could you lose the weight. It's not how much weight I could lose in the shortest period of time, because that will only get you more of what you don't want. So be kind to yourself in the process. Be patient with yourself. Understand what makes you tick. Begin to understand where your relationship with food got started. What do you use food for? If you have food or the unhealthy food up on the pedestal, knock it off, because it's just food. It doesn't have any power to make you feel better or to solve the problem, right? Food is nourishment and fuel. And yes, we eat food for pleasure, right? Ironically, the unhealthy stuff tastes pretty good because that sweet taste rings our bells. But it's also what makes us sick and unhealthy. And so there's a way to add that, right? Remember how much and how often? There's a way to add that without giving it up. But only you could decide what you want more. More of the unhealthy food, or a life where you feel comfortable in your body, where you feel healthy, where you live longer and fuller. Because having done this work for over 2 decades, I know that with my clients who struggle with their weight, for some of them, it stops them. It limits them. They don't live their life to their fullest. They don't travel. They don't date. They don't go out. They don't buy new clothes. Life is too short. We don't get time back. So taking you through these steps, nourish your body. How much and how often in 7 days? 1 to 2 indulgences a week, right? Get really clear on what the habits and behaviors are that you need to change, so that when you lose the weight doesn't find its way back. What are you saying to yourself? What is your self-talk, right? What is the negative self-talk, right? Be kind to yourself and be loving to yourself, and make choices that serve you versus sabotage you, and get clear. What are your triggers? What pushes that button that makes you turn to food? What emotions are you eating, right? What do you want and why do you want it? And so I think that's a lot for you to digest and take what I've just shared with you here and go implement it into your life. You're going to hear a lot of stuff on this summit, but if you do nothing with the information, nothing changes. So I hope you found this valuable. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the gifts that I have for you. And if you are interested in the work that I do, where you can find me, you could find me at lisagoldbergnutrition.com. I've got some free resources there for you, but for the Beyond the Weight Summit, I have for you 7 strategies. It's a guide, 7 essential strategies to lose weight and keep it off for good. So make sure you download this. And also I have a mini course for you called The Missing Piece to Lasting Weight Loss, right? Quick and easily digestible videos to help to take you from where you are now to where you want to be. And again, I am so honored to be here and to share this with you. Lisa Goldberg, nutritionist and weight loss coach, signing off, and have a great rest of your day.